Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the Everton Daily Live, Monday, 26th of February. We still have no idea what's happening with our points, but we did get a point on Saturday, John, that we did. Added on to our total. Good point for you, or 2 points dropped? You were there.
Both.
So what do you think? Both. Okay.
I mean, someone had a modest go at me because I tweeted something like, we just took a draw before the game, so every cloud. I think the bit that lost in translation was every cloud is dark, isn't it? It's the phrase has a silver lining. So I was not very happy at the end because I thought from when, who was it? Thingy got sent off. Gilmore got sent off. We thought, oh, right, we've got a man advantage here. Let's sit on the edge of our box. Yeah. And it just made it so easy for them. And I think I did a subsequent tweet when we stopped on the way home and said something like, they didn't make the best of having 10 men. We made it best for them. Even daft things like if they get a corner, leave one on the halfway line, they have to leave two, and so on. But I've just listened to you guys doing the 1878, and I can't remember whether it was you or Ped, but whoever said it nailed it, which was...
It ain't me.
Yeah.
I'm messing.
It probably was, actually. Just don't leave Dunk alone. Stick your biggest, most or your most physical player next to him. But certainly, again, Beto getting a bit of grief about appalling defending. I was thinking whether the defenders, this lump of a centre forward is getting turned inside out by somebody who wants to get it onto the foot that he wants to get it onto. No one went out. No one doubled up, because that's surely the easiest way to stop crosses is to have two players there.
Yeah. Nick it will force Gross back onto his left foot. Yeah, that's what he should have done. He did well first, but he's not a defender, but he did leave the gap for Gross to go back in to whip
We
it
also
in.
Spent so much time with me screaming from my point on the terraces, send some of these players on the outside because they all want to come inside. Was it Mimosa, was it?
Matoma. No, he wasn't. Adzinga it was.
Whoever was on their left.
Adzinga, Matoma wasn't there, thankfully. Right. It was Adzinga, yeah.
Yeah, he just kept wanting to come inside and we'd let him do it. You think, why? If that's his favoured, it's because you talk about F1, often when they change the tyres, there's two races. The second guy gets on. Whatever the first guy does, you do the opposite.
Yeah.
So if he goes in the pit, stay out. If he stays out, go in the pit. The same should apply here. If a player keeps wanting to cut inside, push him outside. If he keeps wanting to go outside, push him inside. And
no, I think when
as you can tell, I've got a UEFA Pro license because clearly that's what you need to be able to spot these things.
No, but obviously before the game, I would have taken the point.
Absolutely.
At half time, I would have taken the point because the first 25 minutes, I said it on my match thing. It was one of the most one-sided games of football I've ever seen.
Never created much though, did they?
No, but it's because there was a couple of great last-ditch tackles. Really,
it was up the other end.
We made a brilliant block from Welbeck. But it was just the fact we just kept giving them the ball. It was a little bit embarrassing watching it. It was like, you are better than this. I am telling you now, you are better players than what you're doing here because you're just kicking it away.
And that's what drives the debate about the manager.
And that's the frustration. And listen, some of it will be the manager. It will. And it doesn't matter whether you love him. You've got to accept that side of it. But some of them...
Players need to take responsibility.
Players have got to... I say this all the time. I said it under Lampard. And the irony is, if Frank Lampard was on this run, he'd be getting hammered by the fans. But that's a different conversation.
Circumstances are different.
The players... he didn't have as many attacking options. Lampard was what this manager's
Circumstances.
got.
That's assets, yeah. I'm with you, yeah.
But Dice is a much better tactician than Frank Lampard will probably ever be, to be fair. But it's not all on the manager because those players are playing the game. All you can do is send them out with a plan. And when you especially speaking, when you spoke to like Conor Cody or you spoke to Alan Stubbs last week and other pros, ex-pros, Trevor Stephen was another one, wasn't he? You were asking him, you're saying, when the manager tells you something to go and do and you do something different, they were like, no, you do exactly what you said. That's fine.
We have made it, well, I have anyway, but a little habit of asking the ex-players, haven't we? If the manager tells you to do something formation or you personally and it's not working, you just keep doing it. And they've all said yes, haven't they?
But there's got to be a bravery.
There has.
And in the first half.
Branthwaite was disappointing in his comments, not as a person, but he'd clearly been told during the game, hadn't he, we're going to sit off. And then after the game says, I don't know why we did that.
Don't know why we did it. Yeah.
And he's the 21-year-old saying...
But the players have to, like I say, the players do have to take responsibility. The players have to go, when you've got the ball, right, I want to make sure I play it here or I'm going to drive forward. And that's the frustration for me, is that when we do, because when we played them at home, it was the same.
Can I ask you a question?
Well, ask away, John.
Did you watch it on the telly on a stream or something?
Yeah.
Right. What was your thought when you saw that he was bringing Ashley Young on?
Yeah, I was fuming.
Yeah.
Because it made no sense. Seamus Coleman was the only.
If you'd been a Brighton player, what would your thought have been?
I don't think they'd be
Pleased?
Well,
Were they going to sit off us?
I wouldn't look at him and go. I wouldn't have gone.
No, I don't mean it's so awful, but
Yeah.
It was such a, waving of a flag of what my intentions are.
Well, Stuart Slater there, we should have just put Michael Keane on for the last 10 minutes then, if we're going to defend the box.
Well, that's true.
Keane's, 6'3" or whatever.
Yeah.
And
if Dunk is the only...
And he's good at heading the ball away, Michael Keane. That's one of the things he's very good at.
It's a good shout, that.
I
wasn't choice between Ashley Young and Keane. In that's the way you.
I would have put Seamus Coleman on. I would have put Seamus on in front of Ben Godfrey. I would have put Jack Harrison. What I used put Jack Harrison where the core was.
Yeah.
Said, right, we're staying the same.
Yeah.
We've got a fella who's used to playing off the striker, and just the message would have been from Seamus, get it, and just bounce them in the corners and get better turning them.
And if they do get free kicks and they do get corners, let's have Jack Harrison on the halfway line.
Ready to go. But listen...
But Dunk still would have been in the box if we still left him alone.
Well, Tarkovsky, I love Tarky. But to me, is as a 30-year-old centre-back, you've got to go. He's the danger, and I'm going with him.
Yeah.
And go and follow him everywhere.
Yeah.
It was a great header by Dunk, but Tarky's on him. It's a different outcome. But, we got a point. We've added an extra point on it.
We've been here before, haven't we?
No, we have, but what I'm trying to say is that's a tough place to go.
It is.
They hadn't lost their home since August. They're a good side. And
Keep it well, don't
we've
they?
gone there. And that's the other thing, when I look at their players, they've got some really good players, don't get me wrong, but they've got some players who are just average footballers, but they are coached brilliantly about passing and moving. And they move into space all the time. They want the ball.
Passing's a lot easier now if you're the person doing the passing, if your choices have got space around them. Because if you're off by a yard, no one notices. Yeah.
We do that little crazy thing where we... Breaking news.
Might be on.
Okay, we've got breaking
news.
David Ornstein has tweeted exclusive. Everton points deduction for breach of Premier League profit and sustainability rules reduced from 10 points to 6 after independent panel appeal. Second
Why is
charge
it coming out from
appeal to
Ornstein?
come.
That's disgraceful.
So we've got 4 points back.
Yeah.
So that must be they're sticking with 6 points for a breach.
That's how I said this, didn't I?
Well, yeah, but that's just
doesn't make sense.
That's outrageous.
But there you
if that's
go.
the case, because that means Nottingham Forest are going to get a points deduction, and it might very well be the same 6. And they may actually set a bar now that is actually just breaching it is what you get punished.
So we're going to get another 2 points then.
Well, no, you get another 6 for the second one.
No, I meant where we are now. We're going to be 2 points less than what we've got as well when we get the second one.
If we get the second one, yeah. Remains to be seen why. It's not really breaking news, is it? Is it breaking opinion?
I think he's been leaked, doesn't he? He's been given it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because he's one of the favoured ones.
He's the client, yeah. Well, that's a disgrace then.
It is a disgrace.
Really?
It is a disgrace.
It should have been 6
because we're
points
asking
back.
Everton, and
it should be 6
Friday
points
Everton
back
didn't
then,
know
shouldn't
anything, did they? So one assumes it's gone to the club, or actually, yeah, maybe. Who knows? Who knows? He shouldn't know first. That's the point, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest.
Puts us above Brentford.
That was all I expected back.
It's wrong, but hey, we need to hear the judgment now, don't we?
So now the judgment, there's got to be
On why?
where are we with the second charge then?
Well, yeah. We need to see what the judgment says.
Did you expect more than that, John?
Yeah, absolutely.
You did?
Because, it remains to be seen what the reasoning is. Because, of course, the truth is that David Phillips didn't say how he worked the 10 points out. So it could be literally an arbitrary view by the appeal people that just 10 was too many. But most people, I guess, because I've just done it, are now going to assume this is Richard Masters' policy being executed, isn't it? And if 4 come off, the suggestion is you get 6 for breaching. Or they've come up with some other mechanism for determining how you decide it. But our 20 mil breach, if that's what it is, isn't readily divisible by 6, is it? So who knows, mate? We're just guessing. Yeah. You know.
It is mad because what do Everton do with this now?
Well, they have to just take it, don't they? There's no appeal.
Is there nowhere? Do you think Everton should go to try to get this into a European court?
No.
They shouldn't?
No.
Okay. So we should just allow them to make up charges like they have done.
Well, they haven't made up
and
charges,
then make them again. No, but the points is nowhere. It's nowhere in any rule does it say you get points. I know.
It does. It says in the handbook that the independent commission has free rein to give whatever punishment it wants.
Okay, so they had the opportunity to give us. They had the opportunity to give us nothing, didn't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
So they give us
or
points.
expel us from the league.
So what happens?
Expel us from the league.
What happens with the second charge then?
Same applies. The same applies, but now they've got a precedent.
So now we're going to be worse off than aren't we?
But now there's a precedent.
So now we're below. Forget being above Brentford, but actually below Luton. Because we're going to get another 6 points, aren't we?
Well, no, because you're jumping to the conclusion that the 6 is 6 for breaching. We don't know. We didn't know what it was before. What we do know is Richard Masters' view was 6 points for breaching and then an extra point per 5 million breach, hence 10. But we don't know how David Phillips got to 10, and we don't know how this KC got to 6. Now, I'd rather hope we've argued that a variation on the treatment of interest. I don't know. None of us do we?
No.
But we'd still have the big argument the second time, won't we, around if we did get a points deduction on, but 2/3 of this is the same
It's
numbers.
already been done. The Minted Wallaby and Emma says,
but the real indictment
6 points
is
now.
the Athletic know before anyone else.
6 points now, and then 6 points in April, so they get the 12 points that Masters wanted.
I just think that's yeah.
Well, it's as valid as anyone else.
No, people have got to. Before, there was no precedent in the Premier League. They were using the EFL, weren't they?
But you know that this won't ever be used again after this season.
Well, after this season, it's going to get used 2 more times, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
And now they have a precedent of the judgment that was given against Everton for a breach of 20 million. So if I was Nottingham Forest fans, I would be afraid, very afraid, because if their financial breach is significantly greater than Everton's, they're going to get a significantly larger punishment. Unless they've just chose to interpret it, they being the KCs, and this is when the judgment explanation is important. Yeah.
Well,
if it becomes, it can't possibly be a flat, you breach the rules, it's 6 points and that's it. Because he basically said, hey, Newcastle, just go for it, lads. Spend 500 million and the worst case scenario is 6 points. Can't be, can it? So let's wait and see what the judge has to say.
Well, apparently it's all out there.
Oh, is it? Is that what it is?
Everton have confirmed it.
Oh, good.
So
say good. Well, let's read what the judgment is then.
I'm just looking. Someone said it's on the Premier League website.
Well, it should be, because that's where it goes. Maybe Ornstein just picked it up on the Premier League website straight away.
I can't see it anywhere.
The Premier League will have tweeted it, surely.
News. Let's have a look.
We have to
Premier League statement. An independent board has ruled that the sanction for Everton's breach of Premier League profitability and sustainability will be an immediate 6 point reduction. This follows the club's appeal of a pending commission from November 23 to impose a 10 point breach.
An immediate 6 point deduction. We've already had a 10 point deduction.
The appeal was heard over 3 days by an appeal board comprising of Sir Gary Hickenbottom, Daniel Alexander and Catherine Apps. Everton appealed the sanction against it on 9 grounds, each of which related to the sanction rather than the fact of the breach which the club admitted. 2 of those 9 grounds were upheld by the appeal board, which has substituted the original points deduction from 10 to 6.
Good, okay, that's better than the headline.
The revised sanction has immediate effect. The Premier League table will be updated. So basically Everton are now 15th in the Premier League.
So that's the statement. It's the judgment we want to read. So here's the full written reasons.
So we're now on 25 points above Brentford, aren't we?
Yeah.
5 ahead of Luton. 5 ahead of Luton, 3 behind Palace and Bournemouth. See, that win now, we'd be on 27 points if we'd have held on. I mean, it's still very, very difficult to comprehend
Another
that.
140 odd pages, so I won't read it right now.
No. But what, I mean... Right, Everton's saying the speed reading this to see if there's anything. The club also particularly pleased
The
with...
Gary Higginbottom. Yeah.
The club's particularly pleased with the appeals board to overturn the original finding.
Well, they'll be pleased that...
Yeah, that the club failed to act in the utmost faith. The decision on reducing the points deduction was an incredibly important club principle. Points of principle. Bloody hell, Baz. Sorry.
Is this the club talking?
Yeah, it was an incredibly important point of principle for the club on appeal. The club therefore feels vindicated in pursuing its appeal. Notwithstanding the appeals board's position and positive outcome, the club remains fully committed to cooperating with the Premier League in respect of the ongoing proceedings brought for the accounting period of June 23. The club is still considering the wider implications of the decision and will make no further comments at this time other than to place on record its thanks to the Fan Advisory Board and other fan groups, that's us, throughout this process, and to all Evertonians for their ongoing support and patience. Okay, so Everton are now in 15th position in the Premier League, above Brentford. So Brentford play tonight, don't they?
So Everton
so we could do it Moise winning tonight,
yeah,
and by 3 or 4 goals.
So there's page 50 up, 55 onwards, I think, thereabouts. 50 something onwards. Where are we? This isn't very good viewing, is it?
No.
Let's talk.
Like,
anyway,
there you go.
Four's at the low end, isn't it? I think of what we
Yeah.
or I hope for anyway. Yeah.
What do we do?
Oh, we don't do anything differently. Win football matches, isn't it?
I know, but and you know what? If this was done, as in there was no second charge,
Yeah.
my mindset would be positive now. Right, come on then, we're up there now. Let's go.
Yeah.
And it still has to be like that, in all fairness.
Yeah.
But to me, I just don't see how we could be possibly done again.
No, not for points. And I think
for points.
The grief that they've got, one presumes that Forest will get points, but Everton and Forest therefore will become the only clubs who ever get points deducted in this way.
Yeah, it is crazy, being done for building a stadium, but hey ho.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll read that.
I'll
read that later, but it looks like in this judgment, the KC has outlined what Masters said in his witness statement, because it 21.5 talks about him deciding that 5 million, an extra point per 5 million, is a good idea. But there's no underlying evidence for this figure from Mr. Masters. So in other words, he making up as he was going along.
I mean, well, it is a good idea. So it should have been 6 points back, and they should have gone.
Yeah.
That's what we agree with, a point for every 5 million, because that makes sense. We all understand it. It also gives you the calculated risk, doesn't it? If you're going to spend money, Everton want to spend 40 million this summer. Well, that's fine, lads, but guess what? That's 8 points if we go over. So are you confident that you'll get more than 8 points by buying this new signing? At least you would know, wouldn't you? Makes sense.
Well, you would.
Just grabbing an arbitrary 6 points from nowhere and going that, what you've done, we're saying, equates to 2 wins. Where's that come from?
Well, what they've tried to do, I think, in this case, I can't read it on my phone, but it seems to be, he's done a far more comprehensive review of how to set the sanction. So for example, he said, 10 points is too big a percentage of the overall points available. There should be some relationship between the deduction and the points you get for winning games and things like that. And then I'm guessing, but I'll print it and read it later, that he'll get to a punchline that says da-da-da-da, and therefore 6 points. So I don't think, to be honest, and I could stand corrected later, can't I, that it's going along with a 6 points for breach and then we'll work something out. I think he's tried to give some explanation as to how he's come to 6 points. And if that's the case, and it's all to do with sporting advantage from spending too much money, then Nottingham Forest probably have got a real challenge on their hands, haven't they?
Well, aren't they, Forest?
Yeah, because one has to assume they get more points than Everton did, and Everton got 6. If you took 6 points off Forest now, where would that put them?
Yeah, they're in big trouble, aren't they?
They're in big trouble, so...
yeah.
Points off Forest would have them third bottom. And 7 points behind Everton or something. 5 or 6, whatever it is. Yeah. Anyway, but you're right. We should feel, oh, thank God that's behind us now. At least we know where we are. But we don't, do we?
No.
And if the cases against Nottingham Forest and Everton take as long as this one has, then it's going to be way down the track, isn't it, before anyone knows?
It's still ridiculous. I am, even though I thought that that's what it would be, I am disappointed.
I am.
Disappointed.
I am, but I've only briefly read what the judge said. I might feel happier that he's applied some logic to it rather than just some random, I'm the chief executive of the business prosecuting and I've decided it's 6 points for this and it's 1 for that and that adds up to 10. Yeah, sort of thing. But Everton are right. But if we focused on the sanction, then we've not challenged the interest type stuff, have we? Therefore, we accept that we've breached last year and we're going to accept that we've breached again.
Well, if we've breached again, we will get 6 points taken again.
How do you work that out?
Because I know what they're like. They've done exactly what I knew they would do, which put 4 points back because it was the easiest thing to do because they hinted that that's what it should be. It's all of this is just, it's written already. They try to dress it up as if, we don't know. It's the collusion is incredible.
So you think 2 different KCs are colluding with the Premier League?
Well, the Premier League choose them. If I'm choosing, if I've got a mate and I want a decision, I choose it. Well, it's funny. I would have accepted it. If they'd have come back and gone, Everton have got 6 points back, I'd have gone, oh, sound, they haven't listened to a word. All they've done is what Master said, which is a 6 points for breaching. They've just discarded the other.
We have to read how they've calculated.
No, you can read how you want. I knew what was going to happen. Therefore, it won't surprise me if we then get hammered with another 6 points. So it's up to us now to somehow finish.
Entitled to our own opinions, but this judgment...
Mine's just played out correctly, though.
This judgment will be used, as a reference point for the case that we're going to have and the case that Nottingham Forest are going to have. And, he's disregarded some of the things. He's basically said in the bits and bobs I've read that the previous commission didn't look at it in the right way. Maybe that's because they had no reference points. It's always easier, isn't it, to look at what someone else has done, find out what they did right, pick that, find out what they did wrong, don't pick that. And they've tried to put some logic around it. And clearly this case, he appears, again, I'll stand corrected when I've read it, but he appears to have had more comfort in, if you like, becoming a reference point for how you work out what points deductions are, which the first case he didn't. Yeah. And this guy's, presumably a more experienced one. He's got a knighthood as well, maybe a bit older, I don't know, a bit more experience. But let's wait and see. But we need a timetable now for the next charade, don't we?
It's there, isn't it? We're not going to know till, when is it? They've said June the 5th, is it? When everything's finished. The week at, or no, May the 29th.
It depends if you appeal, doesn't it? Yeah.
But you're going to appeal, aren't you?
If you get a punishment, yeah. Anyway.
Well, if Everton have breached, right, again, which again, it's I can't get my head around it. But
so hearings must be completed by April the 5th. And then a decision 7 days later, having just waited virtually a month. Apparently it can be done in 7 days. Then the clubs have another 7 days to appeal, which seems a bit odd that you get as long to decide to appeal as poor judge gets to decide what the outcome is. And then the appeals must be concluded by the 24th of May, which obviously is after the end of the season. So one assumes, starting right now, 2 Premier League clubs down in the vicinity of the relegation game are going to be in appeal with the Premier League after the season's finished. And therefore, maybe 3 or 4 other clubs, because 2 are going to be presumably definitely relegated by then. You might think the way they're going, Burnley and Sheffield.
Burnley and Sheffield United, they're gone.
So 3 or 4 other clubs, maybe including the 2 who are appealing, are all going to be waited to see whether they're relegated or not. Now, how much pressure does that put on the KC for those 2 cases? I mean, I've got questions like, are the Nottingham Forest case and the Everton case now going to go along in parallel?
Haven't they said Forest are getting heard first?
I don't know. I've not heard that.
So Ornstein said on Friday.
Oh, well, Ornstein knows everything because that's not in the rule book, is it? And both of them were called out at the same time. And the timetable doesn't say anything about this is just for the first one.
There's nowhere in the rule book does it say points deductions.
Well, it doesn't say no, you can't have point deductions.
It doesn't say it.
It says you can have anything.
It's mentioned 8 times in 346 pages, and it's never once applied to a sporting sanction. You can sigh all you want. It's not there. If I want a rule, I put a rule in. You breach, it's 6 points. Done. And I go.
Read the rule which says that the KC has freedom to apply any sanction he wants.
A KC, not the Premier League.
It's not the Premier League setting the sanction.
It's their rules. It's their rules.
What do you mean it's their rules?
Is it? It's not a KC, is it? It's not Jimmy from down the bleeding road who's got thinking patted someone on the back at the Palace and being given a knighthood for it.
The Premier League.
Or supplied the Tories. No, hang on. Let's have it right. It's you can shake your head. That's fine, John.
No,
I like the fact that you look down the line and go, "Oh, they're dead honest." I like that.
I don't put words in my mouth, Baz. I'm not saying anyone's dead honest.
You said to me, no one's going to be in a KC. You think a KC can be influenced?
You're referring to the Premier League.
No, the Premier League. I'd choke if I used the Premier League and honesty in the same sentence. You believe these people can't be influenced or aren't told. I believe the exact opposite, you see. And that's just where we are. I believe and all they're doing is they're not dispelling what I think. All they're doing to me is saying, you are right, Baz,
that's because you've got cognitive bias, that it's all a big conspiracy.
Well, it is a big conspiracy.
Okay.
Because no one's ever been done. You're telling me
it is a big conspiracy.
What are we in, 2020? So it come in 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's 10 years without being used.
Nobody's ever breached in them 10 years. Are they?
I don't know.
I'm asking you. Do you believe that?
Well, no one's been sanctioned.
That's a different thing.
Hang on a second. We breached on publicly available information and we never got done. Because the last resort is to send a...
So why are we getting done now?
Because hang on a sec. Because the last resort is to... Again, it's within their rules. The process of punishment, if you want to call it that, is let's use our own local phrasing.
Go on.
To put you into special measures, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
Part of Everton's discuss, which clearly hasn't come out in the cases, is the Premier League changed its mind about what it said it was okay in December time and what it said wasn't okay. Yeah. You know, in March when we got the first case.
Yeah, the Premier League have updated the league table.
Yeah.
Everton are 15th.
Yeah. So, right. And then it goes off to an independent commission where a trustworthy King's Counsel looks at all the evidence without any emotion, without any bias, and concludes what he thinks the outcome is. But some of his input is what the prosecution say, and some of his input is what the defence says.
Yeah.
And whichever those give a more compelling story, right, influences, and that's how court cases work,
of course,
influences his judgment. And if there was 12 people in a jury, it would influence them. And if me and you were on the jury, you'd be down there somewhere saying, it's all a bloody con. What's the point of me even telling you what I think? Because I've already decided. Yeah. And I'd be the one man in 12 who seeks to change the views of the other 11. That means thingy fonda. That gets to play me, doesn't it?
Go on.
Whatever. And they come up with a judgment. Now, what was really disappointing the first time is the KC didn't explain how he worked out the points sanction, which, according to the rules, he is allowed to apply, right? But it looks spookily like what Richard Masters wanted in his witness statement, didn't it? And that's still hanging over us, right? Now, I've not read this judgment. I rather hope that when I print it off and I read it, it sets aside that part of the conspiratorial thing because he explains how he's got to 6. And that how he got to 6 will be used by the next KC, in our case, and the next case, the other KC, presumably it's a different one, in the Nottingham Forest
So in your
case.
opinion, you don't think they'll just go, well, you breached again? So it's 6 points again?
No.
Okay.
No.
So what do you think will happen then? Do you think it'll be, because we've been done for 2/3, it'll be a further 2 points then? Because if you
I really don't know, because clearly the only thing we know, all of us, is that, and I think it's wrong, and I know you do, because you've been banging on about it for weeks, and I've been agreeing with you, and so with everyone in the room, I guess, and most of the people who are watching, is a points deduction isn't appropriate.
Yeah.
Well, it's now confirmed that it is.
Yeah, but that's it now.
So then it just becomes, how big is the sanction? How many points do you get deducted? Therefore, they need an ology. They need a mechanism that's not subjective.
Yeah.
Okay? So on that thing, maybe Everton will get a points deduction. But whatever we get, Forest will get more.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we're all going to look complete numpties if Everton breached it last year by 250 trillion, aren't we? But you know what I mean? But our assumption is that the decline that Everton have enjoyed in recent years of trying to do the right thing and reducing wage bills, reducing amortisation and all those sorts of things has continued. Yeah. And maybe we will get points again, because if it's being affirmed now that point deduction is appropriate, and he has defined an ology for determining how you calculate what the points deduction is, then there is a line of sight that says if we've breached by 20 million or more, we get another 6 points.
Yeah.
Except then the mitigation would be that 2/3 of that punishment is already bedded into the previous punishment because it's 2/3 of the same numbers, right? And that's where you might get to 2 then. The other third.
Yeah.
In both cases, though, you would expect if Nottingham Forest have breached by a bigger number, they'll take a bigger punishment. And therefore, the gap between Everton and Forest is only going one way, isn't it? It's going to get bigger.
So there, yeah. So it's literally...
So our players...
We're in a fight with Forest then, aren't we, really? And Luton.
Well, if it's a fight with Forest and what I've just said plays out... Yeah, it's between us, Forest, and...
So, like, at the moment...
But with us having a 4, 5, 6, 7 point advantage over Forest when that starts.
Well, if they both got... Imagine they both got 6 points next time. Like, I can't see how that would work when they've massively breached. Like, but say they didn't. Say it was both 6 points.
Right.
We'd be a point ahead of Forest with a +8 goal difference.
Yeah, but it's hard to see how we get the same punishment as them when 2/3 of our punishment is already bedded into the punishment we've just got.
Yeah. Well, I hope, John, that it is taken into consideration.
So if you looked, because you've got the league table.
I was just looking at the league.
If you've got the league table on, okay. How many points ahead of Forest are we right now?
1.
Right, so we're 1 point ahead of Forest. We both get 6 points, say, at raw level.
Yeah.
Then we try and mitigate it down. We've already had 2/3 of it. So it's not 6.
How can you do it again? Yeah. So we'd be 4 ahead, wouldn't we?
So we'd be 4 ahead. And then both of them...
Sorry, be 5 ahead.
Oh, 5 ahead. So I thought it was like 5, 6, 7, whatever.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's hard to see, based on the rumour net, if you like, that if Nottingham Forest have a much larger failure to satisfy, the 105 thing, then they should end up with a larger punishment.
No, they should do, yeah.
So there's a reasonable...
I still don't believe points deductions are the way to go.
No, me neither. So in your summary, or our summary, if Everton and Nottingham Forest get the same level of punishment that the next time as we've just got, we've just got, i.e. the aforementioned 6 points, right, we'll be a point ahead of them. Because we're a point ahead now.
Yeah.
How many points clear of Luton are they?
Forest at the moment will be 4, won't they?
At the moment,
4 ahead.
So they'll be 2 behind.
And Luton have got a game in hand.
So they'll be 2 behind. So it's. I think you're right when you say, well, it looks like if it ends up like that, a bun fight between us, Forest, and Luton, with the favourites to go being Forest, because there'll be further points behind, worse goal difference, that sort of thing. And if we win at the weekend, that makes all that even worse.
Well, I guess the thing is...
How much nicer would it have been if we'd
have held on, Well, at the end of the day, regardless of the points, we've got to sort our home form out.
Oh, totally.
And if we do that, we'll be fine anyway. Ped, go ahead, mate.
I'm just reading through the decision.
Oh, good man.
And there's a lot referenced in terms of the EFL. And it looks like we've brought in like the Sheffield Wednesday case into it.
Well, we were going to attack them on, if you're going to use that to determine what our punishment is, then we're going to use it to determine our appeals strategy.
So basically, what it looks like is, and I'm sure people will read the whole thing and tell me different, but it looks like we've argued that it should be 3 points for actually breaching, and another 3 points for what we've breached over.
Okay.
Which would give us 6. Richard Masters argued the sporting value of a Premier League point is not the same value of a Championship point. The Championship is a 46-match competition featuring 24 teams, in contrast to our Premier League 38-match competition featuring 20 clubs. The financial value of a Premier League point is also greater than Championship point, given the level of merit-based payments available to clubs and huge significant implications of avoiding relegation or achieving,
so he should be,
missing out on relegation qualification of European.
Yeah. So he's arguing that the points deduction in the Premier League should be lower than it is in the Championship.
I think I
suspect he's not saying that. But my interpretation of that, if you give Everton a 10-point deduction, then just do the sums, people. Do it by 10 by 38.
We've referenced
the Championship. We've 10 points divided by 46.
Right? Nathan has said 2 points for the breach and 4 points for the 20 million overspend.
That makes sense. Is he just?
I don't know.
Is he back engineering it? But we need to find, therefore, if the KC head has said how he's calculated the 6. Because I actually like the idea of what this lad's just said, which is 2 for breach and then another point for every 5 mil. Not great for Nottingham Forest, but at least, as you said last week, Baz, you get it.
I understand it, if that's what they're doing.
In fact, it doesn't really matter if it's 3 points and then 1 per.
I just want to know how you get my injustice. Right? I've said it a million times, so I may as well say it 1,000,001. I don't agree with points deductions.
Me neither.
I don't agree with Forest getting points deductions because they're trying to stay in a league that is in a world where Everton can bring in 25 million plus profit in a year and Chelsea can spend 612 million in a year.
One doesn't.
One breaches and one doesn't. Yeah. That's not fair in any world. It doesn't matter how much Chelsea have got or what that isn't fair in a Premier League. So a team coming up from the Championship supposed to try to stay in this division where everybody else is spending crazy money, and then what you're doing is you're taking points off them, points they've won. I don't get it. I don't get it. A world where a football club is building a stadium and that's what takes you over the breach. Forget about whether Everton will run well or poor, good or bad. We know that. We know Everton have been run poorly. The previous people who were in charge of it have gone. The ones that have run it into the ground. The other fella who's part of that is hanging on somewhere on his yacht. We're not arguing with that. That's a fact. That's out there. That's a fact. But without building a stadium, Everton wouldn't have breached. So you got a club trying to come up and compete to try to stay in the league, getting done, and you've got a club building a stadium, it's being done. And you've got one playing in cup finals, having spent $1 billion and losing to half a team of kids. But they're okay, even though they've admitted for 20 years they've done things they shouldn't have done.
They also admitted to UEFA last
and they
summer.
Admitted to UEFA, paid a fine, but that's left. That's why I just don't get it. That's where my injustice comes from. There's nothing there in black and white. If it's in black and white, written down, I understand what you're saying. It's open to someone, could have done whatever he wanted. I understand that. I want it in the rule book.
I think it should be codified.
And if it's in the rule book and it says, I wouldn't do it. There's other ways which you can make sure the club, because don't forget the whole rules are there. They're nothing to do with sport and fairness, because if they were, Chelsea, Man City wouldn't be allowed. Go ahead, Ped.
Words of wisdom.
A little bit in it saying basically they've acknowledged that 9 points, anything over 9 points is nonsense.
Yeah, because of administration.
Because of administration. So it basically said, it says in that event of insolvency, it's a more serious matter for the competition, which is indicative that a 9 or more point penalty for club in respect of breach of PSR would be too high.
Well, yeah, and that's what we said straight away. How could you come up with a mechanism?
That means one of the 4 points we got back was simply because administration's only 9.
Then that leans back into the 2 for breach and 1 point for every 5 million, doesn't it? could lean into that, couldn't it? Could do. I'm saying it does.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying the 6 points doesn't make sense to me either.
Let's see if you can get down the bottom, page 50 onwards, of how the judges decided the answer is a 6-point deduction.
You see,
We've also taken into account the number of points available over the course of one season, namely 108. A 10-point penalty is nearly 10%,
which is way too high.
The number of points available for a win and a draw, i.e. 3 points deduction, is irrelevant to a raising one match win. 1 point is relevant to a raising one draw. We were told that the median and mean points earned per season through the history of Premier League was respectively 49 and 52. 10 points would therefore be approximately 20 points of the mean and median points per season. The Premier League structured sanction submission, of course, we see the force in Shagger Silk's submissions. That's what Shagger Silk's. If any way can be placed, it is not even a guideline. The Premier League clubs have declined not to adopt any guidelines, let alone any that adapt a structured or mechanical approach to a sanction, as the Premier League structured sanction submission seeks to do. It is not supported by any underlying evidence or support from Premier League clubs. Indeed, it has produced by the Premier League board without consultation with the clubs. However, it seems to us that the broad view of the Premier League board, which is bound to act in the interest of all Premier League clubs that breaches Rule E.51 or a serious matter requiring a substantial points deduction sanction, is worthy of some respect. So that's putting the blames on the clubs for not having any structure, basically, isn't it?
Well, the Premier League doesn't have a structure, but you need evidence that the board of the Premier League asked the Premier League clubs to vote on it, which I think they did, and they said no, because they want it to be a bit vague. They want the best lawyers to get the best results for the best clubs.
Riley says, read the last paragraph, Ped.
I'm getting down to it
now.
It's a very long bloody document.
No, just when you're ready.
I started at the bottom, never mind anywhere else.
When you see, that's to me, that's what I'm saying. I don't agree with points, but if they'd have put in black and white and said, like, again, I keep saying your mechanism of the 1.5 million makes the most sense to me.
It's the simplest, isn't it?
Well, it makes the most sense.
You draw a line at 105 million. Every 5 million, up to 5 million, beyond that, you lose a point.
Trend is the word that gets used loads in it.
Well, what he's trying to do, I think, is make the points thing is, well, he's reading it. The points thing is emotive, isn't it? 10, 12, 3, 6, whatever. He's saying, what's the impact of the points deduction in relation to what the points that you could have had? But the only thing that I haven't heard said yet is that it's accepted in local folklore that 40 points stops you getting relegated. So 25% of the points you need to avoid relegation, Everton got sanctioned for.
That's what someone's just said. Right. The points, spreading the points is worse for the lower clubs than it is the teams near the top.
Exactly right. And by definition, we've had this chat before. If Manchester City got a 10-point deduction, they might just win the league by less points, might they? If Luton got a 10-point reduction, no matter how brilliantly they're performing right now, they get relegated.
It says, on the basis of the finding commission and our conclusions on the grounds of an appeal, trend is the only mitigating factor raised by the club for which credit should be given.
Right.
The EFL guidelines provide for trend by adopting a broad brush mechanical approach as set out above. 1 point is removed from any points deduction if the PSR loss for T is less than that for T-1, but 2
That's
points
-1,
if the loss for T is less than for that T-1, and the loss for T-2 is less than the T for that of T-1. In the club's case, as we have explained, as a result of COVID-19, the scheme for FY22 was altered so that the figures for T, the mean minus 1 and T minus 2 and T minus 3 were used for T minus 3 showed an adjusted loss of £58 million. The mean of T2 and T minus 1 showed an adjusted loss of 55 million and T showed an adjusted loss of 10 million. The schedule gives a figure of 59 million for T minus 3. We have used a lower figure of 58 million in paragraph 3.4. The difference which appears to have raised roundings up and down does not matter for the purposes of this decision. Mr. Rabowitz submitted that the downward trend in losses was something to be taken into account in mitigation, and for that, the EFL guidelines, 2 points should be removed from the reduction. If you can make heads, I'll take
Well, that seems to suggest it got...
Because we've got
started
better.
at 10.
Yeah.
Started at 10. You got one because... We got one because of administration's only 9. Then we got 2 more because of the downward trend. That's 7. Down to 7, I mean.
So we're reducing it.
So where's the other one come from?
Whilst the Commission said it is inappropriate to import specific provisions from EFL guidelines, and consistently improving trend is something for which credit can and should be given by way of mitigation, because it evidences effort and intent in respect of addressing losses that are unacceptable under PSR and thus compliance with PSR.
Yeah.
So will that help us with the next charge?
If the trend continues to go down?
Yeah.
Yes, of course it would. But is he... Because they've just argued reducing from 10. Now, you said at the beginning of this, what was it, Everton had 9 mitigations or something, did you say?
That's what it said in the thing.
Well, they only accepted 1 of them.
2. They said they accepted 2 of them.
I thought Ped just said the only one he accepted was the trend.
No, on Everton's thing, it said 9. And
Okay, they accepted 2 of them. Was the other one the soft one? No disrespect, soft one that we weren't being naughty at all, and it was important that.
Hang on, there's another very, very long paragraph here. However, we consider there are difficulties both in carrying over the numerical points adjustments of the EFL and or giving a factor of this kind of significant weight in the present case. In our view, the Premier League, not having adopted a blunt reduction in points based on reduced PSR losses over the relevant period, the nature of the trend needs to be considered.
Yeah,
we consider there is a difference between, on one hand, a situation which there has been steady, significant year-on-year decline in losses and a modest breach of 105 million loss threshold. And on the other hand, a situation where a club has lost so much money as a result of spending on players unmatched by revenues over early years, that is at a loss threshold at the start of the final year of the period, when it starts to reduce player spending significantly. Although in one sense, one can describe both situations as ones in which there is a positive mathematical trend of reducing losses, it is more realistic to regard the latter situation as one of having to apply an emergency brake on spending because it's been too high in early years. In the latter situation, the club is likely to have benefited from having spent significantly in the early years, even when there was much reduced spending losses later. In the former case, in our view, the mitigation of trend as an indication of intent and financial imprudence is much the greater. In the club's case, the trend was anything but steady, the PSR losses in the first 2 years being both very significant and similar in the amount, 58 million and 53 million, and the losses before the start of the third year PSR period being over 105 million. But considerably, spending breaks were applied in the final year. Therefore, agree with the Commission that the degree of credit to be given is modest, given the failure of the club successfully to address the position with regard to losses over the 4-year PSR period. We also agree with the Commission that with these purposes we should ignore any figures for T+1 financial year 23.
That's the year that we're about to get done on.
So what's that? So we should ignore. What does that mean?
So they haven't taken. I can only assume I rather hope that Everton mentioned during their submission that, and in the year that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah,
that trend continues.
It's a better one.
Yeah.
So they just ignored that.
Yeah. I think
that's fine.
I quite like the idea he's talking about.
Daniel, no, we won't. I don't think we will lose another 6.
I quite like the idea, Ped, that he's talking a lot about trend, right? Yeah. Because a couple of things, if we go all parochial. Yeah. One is, it seems to me, to mitigate the concerns about the next case, because the trend, if it continues to improve, will be part of the mitigation. I think also that, and somebody's just messaged me. Okay, I'll come to that in a sec then. Ornstein apparently said that this case, he accepted that Everton didn't try and pull the wool over the eyes of the Commission, which is very important. So that would be the 2 mitigations. We weren't bloody lying.
Yeah.
And by the way, we're making it better.
Yeah.
both of those, or certainly the latter of those, isn't great for Nottingham Forest because, of course, they'll have had 3 years of losses on the trot. Yeah, so they knew they were already into losses from the 2 championship years, and then they've gone into the Premier League and obviously had to buy to try and survive.
Of course, yeah.
Yes, mate.
So there are, firstly and last, we have taken into account aggravating factors. We consider our 2. First, there is the extent on which PSR losses exceed 105. We have already dealt with this. We do not understand paragraph 105 of the Commissioner's decision. The extent of PSR loss is an aggravating factor from a starting point based upon mere breach.
That's quite critical of David
uncontroversially before us. Is clearly important that there is no double counting in the sense of treating the excess loss of 105 million more than once. But we should not to do that.
English isn't his first.
Sorry,
language,
it's on. I'm just reading off my phone and my eyes are going all off.
No, I've just looked at time.
It is. That's why I stopped.
The loss up over the upper loss threshold of nearly 20 million is clearly substantial. For the reasons set out above, we can infer that it gave the club a significant sporting advantage, which, although impossible precise to quantify, requires a deduction of some points in order to eradicate that advantage, to be fair to other Premier League clubs.
Yeah, makes sense.
Second, there is an admission by the club that they have submitted information to the Premier League which was wrong,
yeah.
and in their own phrase, objectively misleading. The Premier League is entitled to receive accurate PSR information and should not be materially misled. The purpose of August 2022 PSR submission representation in respect of stadium debt interest was to persuade the Premier League that there had been no breach of PSR because of substantial downward adjustment of the losses to reflect the payment of the interest. Mr. Rabanovich referred to August 2022 PSR submission as a pitch, which in some respects it was, but the error was not simply a slip or a over-enthusiastic proposal. It was representation of the facts set out in the formal PSR submission to the Premier League, which was entitled to proceed on the basis that factual assertions in relation to accounting matters in that documentation was correct. The club appears to have persisted with the representation for some time. The fact that eventually the Premier League did not accept the inaccuracy information does not make it less than an aggravating factor over and above the deemed breach of Rule E-51. A club should not be submitting incorrect figures to the Premier League in respect of FFP submission in circumstances in which the club uniquely have access to underlying financial data, even absent any accompanying dishonesty or other accompanying mental element. That is something we are entitled to take into account as a factor that aggravates the breach of Rule E-5.
Do you know what all that means?
To some extent. We lied about the fucking stadium. That's what it means.
It means we didn't tell the truth.
Yes, it is.
And that becomes something that you get punished for.
You got judged for.
So we would have had less points. More points taken off the 10, or less points in the first place, had we not been perceived to have misled.
Yeah.
Having said that, and I'm sure, and I think it's probably getting a bit boring now, listen to all of the paragraphs being read out, but fundamentally, there's nothing here about the type of dialogue and relationship that the Premier League and the football club had around what was and was not allowed. Yeah. And for me, it really struck home when we saw it the first time, and the way some of the things were phrased in the first result, which is fundamentally, we can talk to you and tell you what to do, but at the end of the day, it's you who's accountable to sticking to the rules. And if we've naively allowed ourselves to be led that if we filled a form in a certain way, it would be all right, then we've just found out that it wasn't it? The trend stuff is interesting because that clearly means that you get significant credit for reacting. I think this KC is a bit like the first KC when he's sort of saying the brakes were put on in the third year. No, guess what? There's lag in this model. You can't sell players overnight.
No.
You can't reduce their salaries overnight. It takes time. And anyone who puts our losses over the last 10 years onto a graph, as we have, and you can take the overlap with you. You'll have more fun now, won't you? It's crystal clear. You can see when we started to take action, and you can see when the graph goes downwards, and they're not the same time.
Yeah.
It's something. all the boring bits, but just a bit here. Finally, we have considered the possibility of suspending the points deduction, but I've concluded that the points deduction proposed is proportionate and otherwise entirely appropriate if given immediate effect. A suspended points deduction would not address the position in the league itself, nor would it address the potential profit share advantage that not having any deduction in points would have.
But again, that's an interesting one because the profit share advantage, curious phrasing, but I guess he means the performance-related income you get where you finish in the league. He's acknowledging there's a financial penalty here as well. And if you suspended it, you wouldn't get the financial penalty.
But they give us, even though they said they weren't going to do it, they have given us a financial penalty.
Indirectly,
if we had 6 more points, we'd be higher up the league.
Yeah, but of course, what a very truly objective lawyer would say, if you finished higher up the league anyway, you wouldn't get the punishment.
It also basically says...
It makes it harder to finish higher up the league.
It also basically says, just under that, in very complicated way of going, if we did give them a suspended point deduction and they broke it, how would we sort that out afterwards? That's what
true.
It's basically
it's
saying.
True, yeah.
How financially and points-wise would we do that later? So it's basically saying there's no suspended points things because we don't know a way out of it.
Okay, so let's summarise this now, which means...
Hit the like button and subscribe while you're here, by the way.
There's perhaps a fair amount there that future KCs will reference back to, but I suspect... and I will print it off, I keep saying that there's no ology here for calculating points deductions because the only ology he's logically come up with is referencing the 10 we already had because it's an appeal, right? So the story here is they got 10 and I've reduced it to 6.
Yeah.
And this is how they've got the 6. So far, it seems to be one of those 3 of the 4 we've got is simply because it's crazy to have a bigger number than administration, which alone slaps the last KC in the face, doesn't it? Right? And then 2 points have come back for the positive trend. And it's not clear to me yet where the other one come from, but I'm sure it's in there somewhere.
So with that trending downwards then, a couple of people are saying that means basically there won't be any points deduction on the next one because it'd be crazy to
if we assume that the trending downwards has continued, don't forget the Premier League claim we continue to spend money on players. Yeah. So if we saw an upturn, then that would look really bad, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but even
that would be whoa, you've gone as far as you think you should go now. Yeah. But it does appear to not give any insight as to when the next KC starts with a clean piece of paper, if I give these guys a points deduction, which I now know by reference to this case is expected, not only acceptable, but is expected, how big a points deduction do I give them? But he's already laid the seeds here, this guy, Higginbottom, I think, isn't it? That you shouldn't get a points deduction for the periods that you've already been deducted.
Yeah.
So we won't get the same as...
So it should be 2 points.
Yeah.
Then,
so going back to what you and I were talking about before, if both of us and Forrest got 6 points each, ours would automatically get taken down to 2 because we've already been done for 2/3.
Yeah.
And they'd still be left with the 6. And yet we not? We assume if their breach is bigger than ours, they'll start with more. So we could end up with 6, they end up with 8. They then try and argue the 8, but we automatically take our 6 down to 2. But hey.
Liam said so a club like Newcastle can now spend £1 billion, gain 89 points and only get deducted 9.
I don't know where the 9's coming from because yet we haven't heard how they've determined what this is. But yes, he's absolutely right.
Pro Dreamer says Forest will only be deducted 9 because...
Absolutely, the maximum becomes 9.
So we got 2/3.
Albeit, sorry, I've just found it. Yeah, 2 points. Yeah, for a trend have been returned, and 2 points, not 1, have been returned because you can't have the same number of points as administration. Right?
Well, maybe. Yeah.
So that means logically the most Forest can get is 8. Can't get 9 because that's the same as administration.
So they breach by miles, got 8.
Sounds like.
So Chelsea can breach by 400 million and get 9. So we got 2/3 for breaching by 19.5. We got 6 points, which is
mad,
a huge points deduction.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That's only this KC's view.
And again, this is the thing. Someone else will come in and go, no, it's totally
But
different.
in summary of that, though,
Absolute
in
joke.
summary of that, everybody down the track won't get. They'll get 8 or less.
Yeah. So again, we're going to be hit the most, as
Everton
always.
first through the loop. We're helping them work out what the system is. So the implication is they will get 8 or less, and we only managed to get 2 through mitigation. We're building a goddamn stadium on the banks of the Royal Blue Mersey. There was a war and there's a pandemic, and
They've bombed. They've ignored all that.
No, I know.
They've denied all that.
And our, if you will, team have only got 2 back. So good luck, Forest, if you get given 8 trying to talk it down. That's what I say.
Well, they shouldn't be, even though, again, I keep saying it, Forest shouldn't be able to talk anything down because it's literally players.
Don't forget, they could do, though, a bit of a bag of sweets type approach, which is you get a points deduction and you get a transfer ban and you get a fine.
So City are only going to get 8 points then, aren't they?
If it's points, the implication.
So 115 charges, win everything, overspend, pay people from everywhere.
If it's points only, yeah.
And Chelsea, who've admitted doing wrong and have done all this, 8 points, and yet Everton got 6.
I don't know why I think this, but Premier League, the people who work for the Premier League might quite like the idea of a huge fine for Man City because they like money. Yeah.
That's it. Just to reiterate,
City's
it's a joke.
sporting advantage over many, many years has resulted in them being Premier League, European,
They're the best team in the world.
and world champions.
They just go by charges, though.
What do you mean?
This is for one charge.
Yeah. Well,
So-
this is for
So
one
it should
charge.
put City out of business.
No, that's what I'm saying.
And I don't
Surely,
want
if
them
it's
to, I'm just
Forest is
saying.
one charge, ours is one charge. Surely, all this means is that if it is maximum 9 points, but that's for one charge.
Well, I think it would be a maximum.
Administration-
Logic would say it's a maximum of 8, not a maximum
Right,
of 9.
okay, okay, split hairs. But
Yeah.
administration,
charge, you mean?
administration is just doing one thing. It's
One
a bad
thing,
thing,
yeah.
but you get 9 points for it. But if Man City get done for 5 things, then it could be 8 times 5.
Lots of 5.
Oh, yeah.
Could
Oh, yeah.
be, yeah.
You know, it could be. I can't see how it's rash. See, this is where it's stupid. This is where we go back to
I
a
can't
past.
visualise a punishment that's big enough to catch City, in quotes, if, the big if, City are found guilty
Yeah.
of all these things,
Oh,
other
yeah,
than throwing them out the bloody league.
But what's
And they might not
crazy
be
is though,
guilty.
but what's
They might not be
crazy is though, going back to what Baz says, what's the point of saying all options are open to us if
When
they're
you don't
not,
actually use them.
But if they're not, though, are they? Because what these are saying is there can't be a points deduction bigger than administration. They just can't be. So therefore, you're going to have to change your rule book now. To
So
say
Everton really have bollocksed it up. Because Everton should have gone and failed big. Everton should have gone, fuck it, then we're spending 150 million. And we guarantee you we'll finish top 8. Take 10 points off us, we don't care. Because we'll have that out the way. We'll have the points taken off us. We've still got a boss team. And we'll be in Europe again.
But
next year.
absolutely, yeah. But like David Phillips, yeah,
It's a joke.
we didn't know what the punishment might be, and we do now. So hindsight's a wonderful thing, yeah. So David Phillips,
But I remember you saying this to me 2 years ago.
I did,
Why don't we just go like that to the
Totally.
rules and spend the money,
Yeah,
finish
on the
high
sofa,
up,
yeah.
finish, it's all everywhere, finish high up,
do what City have done.
go towards the Champions League. If you get knocked down to the Europa League, you're making the money anyway.
Whoever
There's
watch-
no points playing by the rules.
Whoever watches crime dramas on the telly ever,
Me, always.
and the scally who's like a naughty person and is not normally naughty, is when they get an interview, they're petrified, aren't they? But the hardened criminal
Oh, yeah.
always uses the same phrase, rocks back into his or her chair and says, either charge me or let me go.
Or no comments.
Well, yeah,
No
they do
comments.
that, but then
Yeah.
the
But no, well,
punchline
that's
is
the
like,
thing, yeah.
charge me or let me go.
Yeah, and they start laughing.
That's what City say.
Yeah.
And we're the kid who got caught with his hand in the sweetie
And
bottle,
we're panicking.
panicking, going, ooh.
That's what they've caught us for.
So's everyone else.
No, but we've lied though, and that's why they've done us, isn't it?
I think
They've done. Hang on, you're right. But
needs
let's
to
be,
be
that's what it
properly.
says.
Let's be clear.
But no,
Does it
no.
say Everton
That's what
lied?
it says.
No.
It doesn't matter. We don't have to. We don't have
Does
to
it say
dance around this.
Everton
I'm not
It's-
dancing up.
No,
Let's
no.
be clear. We're only getting done because there's someone
No.
kicking their ass. That's
Yeah,
the
but
only
that doesn't
reason.
matter. It says on here we've lied. Doesn't matter what we say about anything. It says we've lied. That's what it says on the paper.
does he use the words Everton
No,
lied?
it says we have given factual.
Fill the form in wrong.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So
we
right,
haven't
it doesn't
lied,
say we've
we've done
lied.
it wrong.
It says we have misleaded them.
We're incompetent more than liars, I think. That's what
but
we've
the
been.
point being is, it goes back to the charge about the stadium, doesn't it?
Yeah.
With the loan, saying that it was all for the stadium. We haven't been able to prove that, so that's what I'm saying. Maybe if we just put our hands up and said, like,
It's interesting, right? Because when you were reading stuff out, in and around that space, we filled the form in, right? And then the KC goes on to talk about fundamental. I don't think he he clearly doesn't use the words, but my hearing of it was Everton were a bit naive because they filled this form in, let's just say wrong. And yet we get to see all the supporting documentation that would show that this is wrong. That's not deliberately lying. If you know you're going to get caught.
Right. I'm wrapping this up, but we'll stay here because we're going to hear Ped and Jack's views on this now, as well as also. Will you come and say, will you switch then? Switch. Come and sub me. Come and sub me. Stay where you are.
But I wanted to do a segue to what this judge has said and what this man says, right?
Go on.
All right.
Go ahead, Jack. Go ahead. Do whatever. Go on.
There's no point talking about Baz if he's not here. Yeah. It's because Ped's lazy.
Go ahead, John. Do what you do.
No, well, he's not here now. What I was going to say is, Baz was fundamentally said earlier on, if it doesn't say in the rules that you can give someone a points deduction, you can't. That's what he was saying.
Yeah.
And some of what's gone on here is in the space of, you don't have to say they lied for people to deduce that they didn't tell the truth. And then you can have very semantic debates, perhaps particularly in courts of law, about the difference between not telling the truth and lying. And the most effective way to not tell the truth is just to say, no comment. Or in America, I plead the Fifth Amendment. Yeah, and stuff like that. But this will all get used in the Everton and Nottingham Forest cases.
Yeah.
But we are, even though poor man's doing it on a little telephone, we are extracting, aren't we, little bits of truisms like you can't get more than an 8-point deduction.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
Unless they change the size of the point deduction for administration.
Yeah, we're learning about this as it's happening. This literally came out as used it already on here. So,
absolutely.
Ped Blessum's just rushing through that statement, trying to find every relevant part he can get to. So there's probably other parts in that might shed a bit more light on some aspects we're confused about. And, in due time, we'll all read over it to find detail, won't we? But at the moment, we're just trying to get what we can get.
It was an international break, so we weren't talking about football. And it arrived just before I left, so I brought a printed version. So I had a printed version here, reading it. And lots of it, probably you don't need to read because it's all backstory. But yeah, lots of people will read it. Conclusions will be drawn. People will then apply a view about what does that mean to Nottingham Forest in particular, because lots of this is relevant to Forest, isn't it? Because 30, 40 players that they've bought, that's not accidental. Consecutive years of losses in the Championship, roll into the Premier League, huge increase in income, and you still make not just losses, but huge losses. That's all going to look a bit naughty. Right?
Well,
it's hard to see them mitigating that one.
The issue in terms of working out how Forest's potential deduction will compare to the one we've had and then our subsequent appeal is what value do you put in, how much do you overspend by? Everton have overspent by just under 20 million when it's all said and done, but I think the verdict was that it's not a malicious breach. It's not what Baz was suggesting then in terms of, we'll just go over by 500 million, we'll completely blitz it and we'll just build a boss squad and firm it. I think their verdict was that are external factors that have pushed Everton over and they should have managed it better, and therefore the allowed loss of 105 million is there so you can manage your way around external factors. But Everton haven't tried to blitz the league by going 300 million over. Forest haven't gone that much over, but they've gone over a significant amount, not because of external factors but because of buying players when they shouldn't, to try and strengthen their team.
But Baz is right in what he says though, because if what, and we're just talking about it now, just you and I, which is I'll do it as my interpretation. If my interpretation of what Ped's been reading out is that going down the track for PSR breaches, two things have come out of it crystal clear. One is a points deduction is perceived to be appropriate, which I don't agree with, but hey, I'm not setting the rules. And if you do get a points deduction, the most you're going to get is 8. So you can blitz it because the worst we're going to get is 8. And I'm telling you what, if you'd stopped before this season had started, you'd done a poll of Everton fans that says we're going to spend £100 million on players, but we'll get an 8-point deduction, or we stay within the rules and don't spend the money on players. We'd all say we could pick up 8 points.
Stay with the same squad that battled relegation
we can get
for 2
8
years.
more points because we spent £100 million on players, can't we?
Yeah.
In theory. And then, of course, it means, again, a point Baz made, to any team in the Champions League, 8 points. So what? So what? Who
No, and
cares?
especially if you are Man City as well, because an 8-point deduction doesn't take them out of that top 4, which is where the money is at the end of the day. Obviously, they want to
That's
win the
why I
league
say
and they aim
Champions
to win
League.
the league.
Yeah.
But the real money isn't being in the top 4, isn't
No,
it?
it's been in the Champions
continued
League. Yeah.
media rights,
Year on
isn't it?
year in the Champions League is where the money is. And Newcastle right now would be thinking, wish we'd spent big in January.
Yeah.
Because the worst case would be 8 points, and 8 points off us might just be bottom half versus the players might get us into the Champions League. Now, you can't see them getting 8 points clear of 5th, but it's a discussion they would have, and that's the discussion me and Baz have had on the sofa, which is it becomes part of your business planning. How much over shall we go?
You accommodate for those 8 points.
Me, I'd change it, as Baz knows, to say there's no relief. As soon as you spend more than you're allowed, in other words, as soon as you're loss making, you start incurring the potential for penalties, and then judges can determine whether it was accidental or whether you did it deliberately or whatever. If you give anybody freedom to go 105 million over, and don't forget it's 15 plus 30 per year provided by the owners, why allow anything? Why allow anything?
But the Premier League will be aware of that, because they'll be aware that they've potentially opened Pandora's box here, and clubs in the top 4 will feel they have the freedom to just take the 8 points and firm it at this point now. So I think that's why we might see a real change in the near future. Because as much as we can sit here and criticise the Premier League, they aren't soft. They'll be aware of that.
Rules are
They'll
gonna
be
change.
aware of the fact Man United might go, yeah, look, we'll take 8 points because we'll build a team that can get 80 points, and that's
right.
top 4.
Yeah.
So I think we'll see a real change on that front. Otherwise, we're going to see points deductions become quite common, but become quite inconsequential. We could see every team in the league take an 8-point deduction because they've just all
then
spend
everyone's
what they
equal.
want, and then it's equal. And
It's not doing
everyone's
anything.
just on
Yeah.
lower points.
Right.
So that's going to have to be addressed, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Should we have a pause there? Have we got to cut over? Yeah.
Hang on, we got a super chat
Oh,
first
super
from
chat.
Tinsay.
Better.
It says, compare your Premier League FFP case and United's FFS guilt verdict. Punishment from UEFA. Premier League ignoring is elitism. The City case doesn't even have a verdict.
I don't know what the question is, sorry.
That's more of a
it's
statement than a question.
No, he's right.
Tinsay.
No, he's right, isn't he? Because
Thanks for the super chat.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. Because if you look at the two, if you think about it, there's 2 clubs in the process, which is us and obviously Nottingham Forest, and there's 2 clubs sort of in the process, but nothing happening anytime soon: Manchester City and Chelsea, and both what they were doing is worse than what Everton and Forest have done, and yet they're not getting anywhere near a courthouse yet. And of course, Richard Masters refuses to say when City's case is going to be heard. And if he thinks this was a bit of a hot kitchen for him, then wait till the City one happens, because you're going to have 19 Premier League clubs and a whole host of European clubs all wanting City to have a baseball bat taken to them. And I just think City's lawyers and the way they prepared their ground and had so long to prepare their ground that they'll actually give the Premier League a bloody nose like they gave to UEFA one as well.
Yeah, well, when you look at the calibre of lawyer they've got with them, and how many charges they've got, the time that takes, City will drag this for every court in the land after appeal, and we'll just make this a mess of paperwork, and they'll make it more painstaking to the Premier League to actually solve this issue than to just leave it alone.
The Chelsea one surprises me, because Chelsea clearly have had or gained, not that it shows anymore, in the past, a substantial supporting advantage by complying with the regulatory rules, by basically carrying out fraudulent acts of paying people offshore and all those sorts of things. The new owners, bless them, and I do think they're right, they came straight out as soon as they got their feet under the table, found things had been going a bit iffy. They told UEFA, told the Football Association, told the Premier League, decided not to take the 2 senior executives who were going to carry over from the Abramovich years, and because they had a statute of limitations on it, UEFA couldn't hit them hard because they only go back 3 years or whatever it is. But that was dealt with nearly a year ago, and the Premier League haven't done anything yet.
But then they can't
They
be
just
hit
don't have
with...
the appetite for a hard fight, I guess.
Yeah.
And they thought Everton and maybe Forest are an easy fight. Who knows?
Yeah, but then Chelsea can't be hit with misleading the Premier League like we have if they've been upfront and honest about their faults, I suppose.
No, the current owners have.
The current own. I thought you said the current owners of.
No, they've been upfront and honest.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But it's the
and
club,
then within that 3
but it's
year
the club
period,
who have spent a decade or more of telling untruths. So, it's never too late to do the right thing, and the right thing might be being honest, because that would say Everton's mitigation could have been in this appeal. We went, oops, sorry, we filled the form in wrong. That doesn't. Ignorance isn't a defence,
No.
right? And Chelsea knew what the rules were. Chelsea, the football club, not Chelsea's current owners, who can't have done anything because they weren't there. But executives in Chelsea knew they were breaching the rules, knew they were misleading, knew, and they got within a smidgen of still being in a job until, Clear Lake and the ownership went, hang on a minute, this is wrong. Reported it to the authorities and said, sorry, you know what, Jack, you can't work for us after all now, because you can't be seen to still be here when you were a part of the cover-up, right?
Yeah.
And that hit them, I think, because that person, the lady who went as a consequence, was someone who'd been doing very good work for them in the transfer market.
Yeah, and Chelsea will argue it's almost a self-governing punishment, isn't it? Because they've got rid of important people from their setup, and the Premier League might well take a different stance to that. But
I'm sure their mitigations, particularly as it's coming from a so-called big club rather than a so-called small club, will carry more weight. Yeah,
someone who makes a bit of money for the league.
Well, yeah.
But the interesting thing in terms of how it may affect Chelsea and especially City as well, as like Ped was saying before, is it 8 points per breach or is it just 8 points overall? Because if City have been breaching PSR, which they've been doing that over a number of years as well, and will have more breaches than Everton have got and have faced 6 points for. So are we going to be talking around 6 points per breach?
No, because you can't apply them retrospectively. They've still won the trophies. They've still bought players and so on. So I think what you'd have to do is go through the charges one by one. And it's like when someone gets done in court and then they ask for other things to be taken into consideration. They know, don't they, that the punishment won't be as bad if they take it all in one go. It's like added time. You don't typically get added time inside added time, do you? So time wasted in the last 10 minutes, if they are added time minutes, is going to be far more productive than wasting time in the 90. So they'll end up with an accumulation, I guess, but City don't have it, or their ownership don't have it in their DNA to admit guilt. So you're right, they'll go and they'll run long and it'll take forever. And while that's going on, City will continue to win league titles, continue to win European Cups, continue to be World Club champions, and so on and so forth. And none of the media are going to go after them like quite a number of them have gone after Everton.
No,
and no one's going after Forest, are they? So let's see.
The situation with City, though, with their case against UEFA, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think UEFA actually turned around and went, oh, yeah, we were wrong, Man City are innocent. I think they just made it a legal dogfight. That's
right, and City won the
impossible to
and fundamentally won on a technicality. Right, so, but it doesn't matter, does it? You go to the court of arbitration and you win. You got more for us?
Right, we're going to do another 10 minutes, but we're going to have a quick break first. We'll do a switcheroo, and then we'll go into M-Tag, so we're just going to have a quick break.
I thought we were on that already.
We'll be back on.
Okay, cool.
Fellas, it's Bush. How you doing? Hope you're doing okay. Miss you all.
Make sure to head over to toffeetvefc.com/shop for all our latest designs. You can get them in t-shirts, get them in hoodies. You can even get them in mugs. Don't forget, if you're a Toffee TV Premier member, you get 25% off your orders. So why not go over, join Toffee TV Premier and buy some merch today. Right, we're going to do about 10 more minutes, so we'll just do some of your comments. It's a very, very, very sort of confusing situation. We've gone through as much as we can. John's going to go through with a fine tooth comb right now, but it does look like Everton have got 4 points back because, number one, the same basically, as we mentioned there,
nothing can go over 9 points by the looks of it anymore. That's what they're saying. Now, whether the next commission use that as, Forest might get 12 points and then they'll obviously go for an appeal, and the first thing the appeal will do is knock it down to 8 points straight away. And the trends, it looks like Everton by having a downward trend, they've also took that into circumstances. But as we were mentioning there, the fact that I'll just get the phrase that I think was used, which was the situation with what was said in the first place about PSR and basically just getting it wrong in terms of putting it objectively misleading is what they've used in terms of when we've put the PSR form in. So they've made mistakes. Everton have made mistakes and have been punished for those mistakes, but also the Premier League look like they've been punished in a way for a couple of legal issues as well. So all in all, 6 points, 4 back, and now we've just got to wait for the second one.
Yeah, but if the Premier League have acknowledged that Everton have objectively misled them in their first case, if Everton don't do as such in the second case, does that maybe potentially give us scope for more points taken off the second one?
Yeah, I think so. I think filling a form in is got to be the first thing. Filling it in right has got to be the first thing that we do right. I'm not 100% sure without reading the whole thing or reading the first thing, but it does seem to be the complication from what people have said about the loan for the stadium, and whether it was just a loan for the stadium or whether money from that was used on other factors. Now, if Everton have put that in, maybe, and I'm not saying if they've put that in, it was purely for the stadium, and there's no evidence it was purely for the stadium, that's where, not saying they're lying, but that's where the
Premier League
feel like they've been misled. Now, as I said, this commission have upheld that, and that's one of the reasons why we haven't had more points by the looks of it. Now, the big word is trend. Just going through it there and seeing it a few times, trend is a big word. And if Everton on the second case can prove, because at the moment we don't know what the second case is, how much it's with for, we don't get these details. But if we can prove that there's a trend of Everton, spending less money, being better with money, and it's just the case that those first 2 years that are obviously part of these 3 years, on the third year we've trended down again, then hopefully it means that, it'd be great if there was no points deduction, but clearly if we can keep it down to maybe a couple at the most, they'll take that into consideration.
Well, if you remember at the time as well, when it initially came out that Everton were going to be hit with a second charge as well, the noise from Everton's side of things was they don't actually believe they've breached as well. So you would believe, if that's the case, that even if they have breached, if it's to an amount where, there's debate around if we have, it will be even smaller than the amount we've breached by on the initial charge. So again, that does show a trend of, decreasing the amount of losses as well. Don't forget, we're losing a year out the back end as well, where our losses would presumably be higher. So if we have breached and we are being charged, you would assume that it does again show a trend of decreasing losses year on year, and the club is moving in a better direction.
That's the crazy point of it. The fact that you've already been punished for 2 of these years and you've been punished for them again. That hopefully they'll take that into consideration, but you just don't know, because it's such an open-ended process in terms of points reductions and punishments, that everything was on the table to them, but it does look like some things are off the table now. I don't know how people will go, we'll get another 6 points. I don't know how we'd get another 6 points, certainly, but I can't say we wouldn't. That's the problem, because there's nothing on paper that says we wouldn't. But hopefully, if Everton, as I said, it would seem from the outside, we know as fans that everything's been reduced. Players have been reduced. Wages look like they've been reduced. Players have fallen off with contracts, have gone. They haven't been replaced by players on big contracts. So we know everything's been reduced. So hopefully, just with that knowledge of that they would look at it and go, you've done everything as if you walk into a room and it's independent and you say, right, here's the facts. We have, everything's been cut. Everything's been cut. We've been slapped on the wrist for those 2 years and everything's been cut. We've been punished for those 2 years and everything's been cut. They will hopefully just say, well, you've done wrong.
We've already punished you.
We've punished you for those 2. What can we punish you with? Fine or something or other. And we move on, and hopefully this is the end of it. Hopefully this is the end of it. But we'll wait and see.
Yeah, well, let's say it is going to be a points deduction. Just explore that narrative for a second.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the maximum it can be then is 8 because they've said it can't be above that because that's what you get for administration and the punishment has to be lower for that. You then bring the trend into account as well, presuming that our losses for this breach are less than they are for the prior breach. And again, Everton's losses have come down year on year. Maybe that's another 2 points off. You then look at the fact that the Premier League's reasoning in this first charge, not giving us more points back as they feel like they have been objectively misled. If that's not a factor in this as well, hopefully again that's more points off. And then you explore the fact that it's essentially double jeopardy and we've already served 2/3 of this punishment because it works on 3-year cycles. So 2 of the years we're being punished for, we've already been punished for with our initial charge with these 6 points. So hopefully that can come into effect as well. And maybe if that's the case, if you are looking at a point deduction, you may be only looking at 2 to 4 points. Obviously, these are all just assumptions and going off what I've heard you say and about what's written in the appeal as well. And it'll be a much more complicated legal process than that. Even if that's the resolution you get to, it'll be a bigger deal than that, won't it? There'll be a lot more loopholes to jump through and so forth.
No, that's it, isn't it? It's whether now the next case, certainly Forest and ours, are based on the precedent set in this, and that's why Forest will probably feel like, well, Forest fans might be rejoicing today, thinking, well, the most they'll get is 8, whereas they might have thought they would get 10, and if they only get 8 and then they can argue it down, like we have, then maybe they'll end up with the same as what we have. And listen, I don't know what they've done wrong, so therefore I'm not going to jump on their heads and start having a go with them. That's the last thing you need. It's not a nice place to base. But certainly with all the like inaccurate stuff that's out there, or and it's hard enough reading. It's people have to sit down and read it. It's a legal document. It's just trying to read it there, and a lot of the stuff, if you don't know what it's for, it's almost hard to put it into actually, to work it all out. But we'll have to wait and see. But David Murphy says on the super chat, an open-ended process, biggest con I've ever heard. Again, this is one thing we need to. There should be It should
be very cut and dry, shouldn't it?
But what that said, reading it, is like the Premier League didn't want, like the Premier League clubs didn't want that.
Well, they agreed to that, haven't they?
But that, I think that comes from because for years no one ever thought it was going to be used. So it was almost like, I'll do what you want. There was no, I think it's because if you break the rules and it says you can do anything you want, then rather than if you break the rules you get a point deduction, then they'll always think, well, they'll give us the other thing. They'll give us the lesser. No one's ever going to... And it's just that, in this case, at this time, the Premier League wanted to prove that it didn't need an independent regulator, so therefore it was going to start punishing people. Forget the independent commission; it's nothing to do with them. They're the people who punish. But the Premier League in the first place, pushing teams. I think Baz said it before. I'm not sitting here saying it's a big conspiracy, but I do find it very strange that no one has been punished in the 10 years or whatever it is that this has been in. But the Premier League have never fully gone in. They've probably just, told a few people off and said to improve, but they've never gone all the way to do it. I find that very strange. But the fact that those rules weren't set in stone, that probably helped the Premier League clubs, because they knew we'll just get a telling off. Because why would they give us a points deduction?
Well, trend's been a big topic of conversation here. Look at the trends from a few years ago. Like you say, PSR's been around for over 10 years. Go back even just a few years ago and clubs were spending like it didn't exist. Yeah. In the last few years, clubs have started to take this very seriously. look at the January transfer window. No one spent because everyone's worried about it. This came at the same time that rumours of an independent regulator to look over the Premier League and stop all of this from going on have came about. It's almost as if the Premier League have had a word with Premier League clubs and be like, listen, lads, you know, that thing that you do that in the past, I've just gave you a little telling off for and said, like, come on, just don't do that, please. We're going to have to put the hammer down on you now if you break this. Because it's all happened very suddenly and clubs stopped spending before Everton were punished as well.
Yeah.
It's happened in the last couple of years, so clubs have been made aware of this, so the Premier League has most likely made them aware because they've been made aware. If you don't start actually enforcing your own rules and enforcing them properly, we're going to have to come in. And that's why they came down on Everton with such a harsh initial punishment.
Yeah, and for a lot of this as well, for a lot of this, as much as we like criticise the club, for a lot of it, there's no way they could have actually got out of the way of it, just because of COVID and because of the stadium and because of what happened with USM. There's no way they could, you know, those players sadly were locked into very long contracts. The players we bought in 2017, they were all locked into very long contracts. So it's not even Everton really couldn't have done much about this. You know, they could have been better in the first place when the whole thing started. And I would never, like, everyone knows, I wouldn't sit here going, oh, we've been really hard done by here. But for them to put, like you just said, put the hammer down at that moment, we were the club that were going to be hit. We fell perfectly on all those things. And for the club to walk in and get the details wrong in the first place, and again, that naivety of either not supporting it whatsoever, like Man City seem to have been done, or gone in and gone, yeah, we've made a mistake here, and then trying to argue that out. The fact that I won't use the word lied, obviously, but the fact that we have made mistakes in presenting our PSR findings, they obviously have gone, no, you had a chance to explain yourself and you didn't. You've basically tried to come in here and mislead us. Basically, and that's what it says. Basically, started to mislead them. And they're all the things that, if any, like Forest will know all this now. Forest will know it's better to walk in, and I think that's why Forest have been really quiet about it, and I haven't like kicked up a fuss like us. And I don't think they've wanted their fans to kick up a fuss about it either. I think they've gone in and gone, let's learn all the lessons from Everton. Let's go in there, give our documents over and just try and explain this away rather than go, oh no, we you know, not saying Everton did that, but
Everton were the first into the fire though, weren't they? Because no other club in the Premier League's had to go through this for PSR as well. So yeah, you're right, it is very much a case for Forest sit back and see what they do, see what they appeal on, see what their grounds for appeal are, what are they unsuccessful on, what can we use, what should we not use as well, and that will be a big part of their strategy.
Yeah. It's going to be very interesting as we move forward, as I said, for other clubs. Hopefully, what we've got to hope is we get through this second charge and that's it. That's the end of it. Now, it might be the end of it anyway. Premier League might look like they're going to decide. And I don't think the Premier League are going to have that vote till Everton and Forest are dealt with. Why would you? You're basically slapping them both in the face, aren't you? You're basically going, oh, no, those rules you're getting done for. But if that vote happens 2 or 3 months after Everton and Forest have appeals or whatever, then it's a lot easier to say we've learned the lessons of what we've been done for and we're moving on to the next thing. So, but I mean, just in terms for us, it puts us above Brentford. They play tonight, obviously, so we don't want them to win. It gives us a little bit of breathing room. It's not ideal, as I said. I'm keeping my powder dry till the second one. I think it's. I'll be honest. I'm not. Everton have earned 31 points this season, and I think we should have 31 points. Simple as that. I can't look at it any other way. I think football, that's what football's about. But for some people, this will be great because we've earned some, and we know now. We're on to the second charge, and this is done with. We've sorted this out. That's safe. You've got that with your bendy bully. Your 4 points, your bendy bully, and your bus fare home. So for a lot of people, that's good as well, isn't it? We've got that.
Yeah, well, we've reached a situation with this first charge where our points deduction for that charge is now manageable within itself. Obviously, there is a very big caveat of the potential second charge as well coming in, which could completely change that. You know, that could be, another 4 points and we're back where we started. It could be nothing. It could be more. We just don't know right now. And all we can do is make assumptions like we've been doing. So it is really, this should be a day where we can be able to turn around and go, look, our future's in our hands now. We know what we're working with. It's not, so we can just take it one day at a time and just go, if nothing else changes, or it changes by a very small amount, it's more manageable than it was.
Yeah.
And that's all we can really take from it.
David Murphy back on the super chat. Thanks, mate. He says, I've practiced law for almost 30 years. When do the legal process reserve the right to punish someone on conviction 3 years after sentence? I don't know, mate. You'd have to answer your own question.
You're the one who studies law.
We're in your
I
hands.
think, to be fair, it might be a sarcastic question. But, you know, I
don't get
speak
sarcasm
legal.
when it comes to the law. It's that above
I don't
my...
get the law.
I fought the law, and the law won.
Yeah.
That's Ned's song.
And that's a message.
That's Ned's song every week. You never won. You'd never win against the law. Would you?
No, because I am the law.
There you go. Think about that, Jack.
I'm definitely thinking about it.
It's one to think. It's one to ponder on as we move over. Right, we are going to. If you want to stay with us, we're going over to more than a game. You don't have to do anything. We do. We have to swap shirts. You don't have to.
Not me and Pets, the ones behind us.
I mean,
mine wouldn't fit in.
Exactly. Yours would be too big for me. You know what I mean? Yours would be too big for me now. So we are going to have like 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere. The magic link will take you straight over there. We'll be talking more on Everton. We apparently some trophy was won. Apparently, I don't know much about it. You know, I don't know anything about it. But we'll continue talking about the Premier League. We'll talk about it from the Premier League's point of view and how badly done to they've been in all this. And poor Richard Masters. He had to go to Wembley yesterday and celebrate with people that looked really weird when he did it and put up more questions than answers, which used to be a song on Question of Sport. But you wouldn't know that because you're too busy watching TikTok. So stay with us. Be back in 5 minutes. Just let us have a break for 5 minutes to just get some water. Thank you. We'll see you in a minute. Bye.